welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Jerry Honored is our guest. He is an expert when it comes to John Butterfield and the Overland Mail, and has been studying it for 50 years. And what got you going on that? Was there some particular thing, Jerry, that you read or saw that got you going on this?
Well, I was on a research and development assignment as a microelectronics specialist near Phoenix for a 3-month contract back in 1970. I was out in the desert with the wife camping. I saw these ruts in the desert that looked very old, and I wondered what it was. I found out it was what is called the Butterfield Trail, which followed the Southern Overland Trail. And then I found out it was from Utica, New York, only 60 miles from my boyhood home in foothills of the Adirondacks, and it piqued my interest, and I never stopped.
Yeah, you know, in fact, John Butterfield, he is buried at Forest Hill Cemetery, and he's got a really remarkable monument up there.
Yes, you know, this is very interesting because the first show for the PBS I proposed, which they want to do, is they want to bring the entire crew out here for the show through Utica and Rome, through the 2 cemeteries. Because I often say that going through Forest Hill Cemetery is as interesting as walking through Boot Hill Cemetery in Tombstone, Arizona.
Well, I've said that many times myself, Jerry.
There's many of the pioneers are buried there.
Yeah. Now, we mentioned, we got to backtrack because we were about to ask you the name of some of those stations,
right?
And we didn't get to some of those. I know a couple of them were Stanwix.
Correct.
And Oneida.
That is right.
Mohawk.
Now, that's the interesting part. When Marcus Kenyon came through there, he went all the way out to San Francisco on a boat, or a ship, I should say, boat, and in early 1850, along with John Butterfield Jr., who was his assistant. They, on muleback, 40 miles a day, rode along that Southern Overland Corridor and selected the exact route and the station sites. Now, in Arizona, they personalized it, and this is the strong connection to upstate New York. He named one station Stanwix. He owned Stanwix Hall Hotel. And as you know, all this name goes back to Fort Stanwix. Mm-hmm. And secondly, about 40 miles away, he named one after himself, Kenyon. And then there are 3 others in Arizona called Seneca, Mohawk, and Oneida. And when people are driving down I-8, snowbirds from here, they probably don't realize it, but there's the big green signs for the exits there. One of them is for Mohawk Valley, Stanwix Valley. Now, those are New York State names because of Butterfield. That's why those names are still there in the West.
Now, Marcus Kenyon is buried in Rome.
That's right.
And is there anything on his monument that indicates?
No, I was this always surprised me with my interest. Of course, I'm biased, you know.
Yeah.
I go there, Tombstone. Oh my God, here's the man, the architect of that most famous trail. Not only that, a short distance away from him is Giles Hawley's tombstone, who was one of the 8 superintendents who was stationed at Mezia, New Mexico. On the side of that stone is his son's name, and it says he died in Mezia. He was also a Butterfield employee, and he died there, and his body was shipped back here and in the Rome Cemetery, another very important cemetery connected to this history.
You mentioned John Butterfield's son, John Jr. He also had another son. We ought to get his name in here so people don't get too confused. Dan Butterfield,
yes,
who worked for Overland and who was a Civil War general, a hero.
Right, and he composed taps.
That's right. Yep.
Now he's buried there. What he did, he worked in the office as a young man, and he laid out the. They said it covered the whole floor. He drew the trail and had all the station sites. He was a clerk in the office. Now this was a family affair. Even his, if you look at the contract, you'll see the 7 directors. This was a family affair. Even Alexander Holland, the treasurer, was his son-in-law.
Mm. And the wagons they used, you mentioned what they used to pull the wagons, but the wagons they used, they're not the wagons that we're used to seeing on movies, are they, Jerry?
Partly they were. Now, at both ends of the trail, where the trail was already developed, they used the classic Concord stage wagon. It was a special mail stage wagon. And these are, I call them the Rolls Royces. Now, the trails were already developed, but through the 1,920 miles of the frontier, they needed something else, much lighter, that could go through sand, up the sides of the mesas, etc. And so what John Butterfield did, this is his genius. Of course, they all had to go to what was called Abbott Downing Company at one time, and then at another time, J.S. and E.A. Abbott. Now, at the time, he went to them and ordered 66 stage wagons. It's it's about 2/3 the weight of the big lumbering Concords, but he partly put in his 2 cents for the design. It was based on the Australian model. The seats folded down to make beds. They had to travel 24 hours a day for 25 days. They only stopped for 20 minutes at the stations. They had to sleep on those stages. So he designed the seats to fold down in beds.
There was a particular name for that wagon, wasn't there?
Yes, he called them a celerity wagon, which means swiftness of speed, which they needed exactly. And unfortunately, there are many others who have picked up on that and mistakenly call other stage wagons that. Now, now, a little anecdote, quick anecdote here. If you go to a Walmart parking lot and look at all those SUVs and don't look at the brands, they all look the same. Stage wagons all look the same, but you get close, each company made variations of that model.
Yeah. Was that the company that was making Butterfield's wagons, was that in Albany?
No, that's a big mistake. I recently had published in the Carriage Journal, I solved that mystery. It was not, it was a mistake by Roscoe Conkling, who stated that his grandfather worked for that company, and he and his wife wrote the 3 huge volumes in the 1930s that were published in 1947. That's where that started. He made a mistake on that. It's what happens to the mind of old men, but that's another subject.
Yeah, you're not looking at me, are you, Jerry?
They were entirely made in Concord, New Hampshire. They were not made in Albany.
Yeah, and the stage stations, what was it like inside there?
Oh boy, that's a good question. You can just about imagine the worst conditions imaginable. Now, even Stanwic's stage station, which was a very important stage station, was made of upright poles with a thatched roof at first. They were very crude adobe. The adobe ones did have a standard design, but they were so crude that most of them were gone in Arizona by 1861, right after the trail was transferred to the central, or I should say the company was transferred to the Central Overland Trail. Most of them fell into ruins because they were next to the Gila River, and as the Indians used to say, the dumb white men keep building their houses in river bends. That was a big joke back then. And they got wiped out.
What about the trail itself? There are still portions, is there not, that can be seen of the trail?
Yes, very good question. Now, Arizona contains about 1/8 of that trail. The most spectacular sections that are preserved are there. You'll be standing on Sentinel Plain on that trail where you can see the serrations of the iron wheels right in the volcanic rock, and you'll swear a wagon train or a stage is going to run over you because that trail is perfect. Now, that PBS show is going to concentrate on that area. I'll have to give them a tour through there.
Okay. And we want to talk about there's a national designation that perhaps is coming. We'll talk to you about that when we come back. Jerry Arnott, our guest. We're talking about John Butterfield and his company. Short break, right back.